Ooh, we've got ourselves solving rational inequalities. The first thing you're going to want to do is remove everything from the right side, move it to the left. So let's do that. I have negative 3 over x plus 7, and I'm going to wave my hands a little bit. I would add 4 over x plus 8 to both sides, so that will look like that, and now I have that. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to scooch that over a little bit because you'll see what happens next. And I'm going to turn that negative 3 into its own negative 3. So let's clean that up. Let's scooch that over because my next step is to combine these fractions. Now, when you combine fractions of any kind through addition, you need a greatest common denominator, or maybe a least common denominator. In this case, the least common denominator is going to be x plus 7, x plus 8. So I'm going to multiply u by x plus 7 over x plus 7, and I'm going to multiply u by x plus 8 over x plus 8, like so. All right. Now I'm going to use distributive property. That gets me negative 3x minus 24. I'm going to use distributive property again. That gets me 4x, how convenient, plus 28. And now all of this is going to be over x plus 8 times x plus 7. And it's still less than or equal to x, or 0. When I combine all of these, negative 3x and 4x combine to make x, negative 24 and 28 combine to make 4, and I have x plus 4 over x plus 8 times x plus 7. Now I have 3 factory-looking things here, and in fact, I'm going to put that in parentheses to really emphasize that point. What I need to do is very similar to when I was having polynomial inequalities. I'm going to create what's called a sign graph, S-I-G-N. And in this case, I care about when things happen at what would create zeros. So I care about things happening at negative 4. I care about things happening at negative 7. So I'm all out of order. So technically negative 4 would happen here. I care about things happening at negative 7, and I care about things happening at negative 8. Okay, so I need to pick numbers that are not equal to these numbers but live in specific intervals. So for example, I need to pick numbers like negative 10. This is going to be a pain in the butt. Negative 7.5. How about negative regular 5? And 0, and I need to see which of these numbers are going to be less than or equal to 0. So I can actually use this equation right here. If I plug in negative 10, if I plug in negative 7.5, if I plug in negative 5, and if I plug in 0. Okay, let's see what happens. I'm going to try to do most of these mentally so as not to really kill my brain here. But this will be negative 10 plus 4, which is going to be negative 6. Negative 10 plus 8 is going to be negative 2. Negative 10 plus 7 is going to be negative 3. Okay, negative over a negative times a negative is going to be negative over a positive, which makes this negative. So this makes me happy. I want this. 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 Now let's plug in negative 7.5. If I plug in negative 7.5 on the top, that gets me a negative. Let's do it this way because I really don't care about what numbers I get. I care about what kind of numbers I get. So I get a negative if I plug in negative 7.5. If I plug in negative 7.5 here, I get a positive. And if I plug in negative 7.5 here, I get a negative. So this negative over negative is going to be positive, which means I don't want the numbers between negative 8 and negative 7. If I plug in negative 5, running out of space. If I plug in -5 plus 4 is going to be a negative number. -5 plus 8 is going to be a positive number. And -5 plus 7 is going to be a positive number. So negative over positive times positive is negative. So you're good. And if I were to plug in a number like 0, I would get positive over positive times positive. Positives all around. So that's positive. So that's no good. Now, before I create my intervals, before I say what's what, okay, one of the things that I also have to keep in mind is numbers like 8 and numbers like, not 8, but -8 and numbers like -7 are not allowed. Why? Because that would make this undefined. So the numbers that I want are everything less than -8, but I'm not allowed to include -8. So x is less than -8. I also care about the numbers between -7 and -4. So I can say that -7, I'm not allowed to include it, is less than x, which is less than or equal to -4. That's my guy. If you have a teacher that wants you to write it out in this type of notation, like the union notation, you could write it out as -infinity goes to -8 with the parentheses, and, union means and, -7 to -4 with a bracket, because we are allowed to include -4. There's nothing here that says we can't plug in -4. If I were to plug in -4, I get 0, and I'm allowed to get 0, and this won't be undefined. So that's my guy right there. Ooh, it's a doozy. But that does it for this section.